talk to us, Ahmed. What's preoccupying your precious thoughts?
Well, right now, the one thing that's really on my mind these days is
Sure.
the impact of like the Aristotelian and Neoplatonic
Mhm.
um, views on Islam. Like,
Wow.
early on we had people like Abu Ma'shar and Jabir who would take a
Yeah.
bunch of Hermetic texts and
Yeah.
pretty much include them in our doctrine and theology. And I was wondering, is that more an example of like syncretic Islam, or is this something that
Wow.
is genuinely like well founded in our religion?
Wow. What do they give you to eat and drink in Canada? Yeah, it's producing such great minds at such young ages. It's like I need to import some of that water or whatever it is that you guys.
Yeah,
Wow, at the age of 17, you're doing it. I'm impressed.
no, it's
MashaAllah.
just because I've been
Allah
watching your
bless you.
videos.
Yeah, and I've not been discussing these things in that like that. It goes to
Mhm.
show your passion and even your question. I just saw in the comment in the you'd sent in the private chat. It said on right on Hermes. Yep. Wow. Tries Majestus are right in Islam. Wow. See, look at all of these questions. That's what a question. Right. So about the Neoplatonism and Aristotelian thought, and I think these things came to people like as science,
Yeah,
because these things were almost a scientific way, if we could say, of looking at things, whether it was looking at ideas or whether it was looking at the world, whether it was looking at. You have to remember, as this stuff got translated, it got brought into the Muslim world. it it was very impressive for people who were intellectually inclined in that sense. They saw it as wow, because now we take things for granted because the world has moved on and science has caught up and excelled and philosophy has kind of excelled and all these things have. So to us it's like, well, but going back in time, these things would have been very awe-striking. That
yeah,
wow, to be able to kind of narrow things down, look at them analytically, divide things, have categories for everything, be very um yeah. So but your question was, sorry, more about theology, was it?
yeah. So like I know early on we had like for example Ibn Nadim or
Yeah,
Abu
Ibn
Ma'shar,
Nadim, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They tended to just kind of accept all of the Aristotelian thought, like
Yeah.
specifically the Aristotelian thought as Islamic, and they went so far as to say that, or even Hermetic thought. For example, Hermes
Yeah.
was Sayyidina Idris, right?
Idris, yeah. I was going to say with your question, that's what certain ulama had felt, and they equated him equally to Thoth
Yeah,
from the Egyptian kind of thing, as and they saw maybe these people because Idris alayhi salam. It's really, it seems like some kind of Greek rendition of the name Idris. It
mm,
doesn't have to be, but the kind of is at the end. But I suppose it doesn't have to be. But it's very obscure, anything about Idris alayhi salam,
mm,
because the understanding is he's pre-Noahite. Yeah, so he's like before Nuh alayhi salam, and so the question is, well, okay, so who was he?
yeah,
And to some people, he's, the person who set out the pyramid and set out certain the infrastructure for the great, uh, you know, empires of Egypt to come. And he's the first who taught it how to write, or he made inscriptions, and he's the first
mm,
to. So, but there's a huge mystery. There's a lot of to do with him being the first in conveying knowledge through somehow the pen. A lot of Muslim scholars have felt that he may have been the first person to introduce this, but he's long before the Great Flood.
yeah,
And so who who who, who is this person? And the Quran doesn't mention much about him at all,
Mhm.
except rafa'nahu, like this. He had this makanan aliyya, this kind of elevator. And then people say, was he Enoch of the kind of the biblical apocryphal tradition? Was he this person that was raised by God, and he was from way before Noah's time, and all this?
Yeah.
So we just don't. The question is, we obviously there's no way of knowing anything, because like this, how could we ever find out? Um,
Yeah.
because
Well,
what
we
could
even
we
have.
unearth? Yeah,
Oh,
what
sorry.
could we unearth that could give us some insight? It's because the only things we can unearth are, right, either science makes some breakthrough into something, which this doesn't seem to be that realm that science could make a breakthrough into that could unearth something, or the other thing is archaeological findings. And if this is something so old, then archaeological findings seem very difficult about an individual. Sure, maybe about an era, but nothing about his era is mentioned.
Mhm.
So it's like, well, okay. If we take, let's say, I'm inclined to believe, okay, not I'm inclined, I do. This is where so here's where I'm at with the Great Flood. I feel the Great Flood was the Younger Dryas, the kind of that mini ice age that occurred. So it's going what, just before 10,500 years ago. So when we came out of the ice age, um, I think about 14,000 years ago started to come out, then maybe 14, 13, 13 and a half or something. And then I think by about 12,000 years ago, so about 10,000 BC, about 10,500 BC, or about 12,500 years ago, the Earth, for some reason, it suddenly goes back into a mini ice age, like unexpected. So first of all, it's going according to its kind of pattern. The ice age takes thousands of years. It does. But then suddenly Earth is kind of catapulted back into a mini ice age that lasts about 1,500 years, where there's huge kind of flooding that takes place. We know much of land, certain parts of the globe do go, certain lands do go underwater. We know that there's still alleged living memory through the oral tradition. There's a great book, The Edge of Memory, which is a study on the oral tradition, oral memory. And it shows where people still have certain memories passed down collectively that date, speaking of certain lands, that are actually there. We know now through obviously satellite footage and geographical awareness, that they wouldn't know, like 100 years ago they wouldn't know, but they have this through tradition passed down that there used to be land there, then it got drowned. And they're right in many of the occasions. And that land, we know through now mathematical kind of surveying, that it was in the Younger Dryas that it gets flooded. And the Bering Strait is another example of that appears in some of the Ottoman maps. And it was Graham Hancock's got a lot of great stuff on this, and
Yeah.
how it was submerged about 10,500 years ago. So if we go with Nuh alayhi salam, this is the era of the Younger Dryas kind of thing. So okay, so we're talking arguably that Idris, whoever this prophet alayhi salam is, he's pre that. So he must be from either the warming, the ice age prior to the mini Dryas ice age. So it's like, wow, how do we even? And what's fascinating is the Sphinx, because the water damage that it has on its kind of upper surface is dated to we're talking almost 20,000 years ago, if not more. So when that part of Egypt and would have been plunged underwater. So, and this finding that was made, that this appears to be water damage, was mocked for so long. And Graham Hancock speaks about this. Other people speak about there's a book about the Sphinx mystery and the origin of the Sphinx or something. It's called. I've got it here somewhere. So it's I've forgotten the name of the first person who kind of postulates this, hypothesizes it, and he gets ridiculed and shunned out of the kind of archaeological kind of like fraternity, and he's discredited and his life is made into a misery. And but now we're finding evidence to support this, like um, what is it, like Göbekli Tepe. So
Yeah.
it's it's interesting. So I just don't know how we would find out ever about an individual, because we'd need writing, and I don't know how we would get that. And even if we got it, we wouldn't be able to decipher it. Like, we've got writing now. We've got some, if we can call it writing, but inscriptions of the Indus Valley. So we have Indus Valley inscriptions, which may be anything from 6 to arguably 8,000 years old. Indecipherable. We don't know how to decipher them. And we're still awaiting the Rosetta Stone. We don't know how to crack this. So it's like, wow, even if we did get hold of, let's say we unearthed some inscription, how would we even the journey is just so, I mean, it's exciting, but I just don't know how. You see, there's certain theories that science could lead us to. So for example, there's a question, did Neanderthals speak? And you say, well, language isn't fossilized, so how could we ever tell? And well, true, but now we've realized that, well, okay, that the fox, what is it, the fox 2p gene, so is associated with language. And you see, it has a certain mutation to it. You see, it's shared with all species. With many species, it's shared, but it undergoes a mutation. We have it at a mutated. We have a mutated version of it, but we're the only ones that have that mutated version, and it's associated with language with us. Now, the Neanderthals, it appears, have the same mutated version, which now is giving some theory that, okay, so maybe they had some kind of language. It may not have been as, and obviously the larynx was not as in as us, but it's kind of halfway. It's not quite like primates and monkeys or whatever, but it's kind of halfway. So maybe they had some kind of sounds and words, but just not as developed as us. So here, science is giving breakthrough to something that could not have been fossilized. So you say, well, did Neanderthals speak? Well, there's no way of ever knowing. It's a lost mystery. Well, actually, the Genome Project is shedding light that actually, well, if they had this, but when it comes to individuals, how would we ever know? It's but I love the question, man. I'm glad you made my mind wondered. So as to the other thing on Aristotelian, I don't know. I don't know if I could have a definitive answer on why certain scholars held the Neoplatonism or even Aristotelian thought. Certain scholars, like they believed in the Uqul al-Ashara, and the 10 intellects, as the whole Aristotelian thing, and pre Aristotle as well, some of them. But this thing of that the celestial bodies are also intellects, and there's the 10 intellects, and then there's the great intellect, Aqlul Awwal, but then there's the Aqlul Fa'al, and it's quite a strange theory when you think about it. These 10 intellects and God's kind of working is hierarchy in the hierarchy of intellects. And although they don't say Allah is the first intellect, but they say from him kind of comes this Aqlul Fa'al, which from it comes the Aqlul Awwal, then the Aqlul Thani, then the Aqlul blah 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 blah. And I see some could say, well, other Muslims do it in a similar way. Like, let's say in the mystics would say, well, first comes this essence. Allah brings it into being, which, let's say, Sufis call it Haqiqa Muhammadiyya or whatever they want to call it. But from this emanates something else. Then from that will be this, and then you'll get matter, and so on and so forth. And some people may say, well, no, what first emanates, we're going to call the first thing the pen. And then from the pen, it brings into existence other things by writing it. But here, writing doesn't have to be like writing, as in it brings it into existence somehow. Maybe these are all permutations of a very profound concept, which is difficult, almost ineffable. Like if you look at science saying, well, first there was, it's saying, well, okay, we're going to T1 just after nothing, and there's some kind of cosmic essence, some kind of cosmic dust or something, some cosmic reality, which then results in a big bang. And from energy emerges, you start to get, you get hydrogen, you will get, you start to get the forces start to break off, you'll have the strong force, the electromagnetic gravity right in the beginning, the four forces. Then matter emerges. And you see, so you're seeing this thing in a hierarchy going back to a kind of singularity. And it's okay. So, it's interesting that you've got, I guess, very different things being said, but maybe in some way trying to describe something almost non-describable, in a way, by using different words. I don't know. But Ahmed, it's been epic. Shukran. I really, honestly, I admire your kind of depth at such a young age, man. What are you're still at college, I take it, or high school in your case?
I just finished high school. I'm entering psychology. I'm doing a psych major.
Wow. Okay. You know what? You're gonna make serious waves, man. There's greatness ahead of you. Honestly, there's
You studied
greatness.
psych too, didn't you?
I do. I have a psychology degree as well. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love psychology. So it is something, anything that can explain the human mind and human behavior. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
We're such strange creatures. But shukran, Ahmed. Much
Okay.
love.
Assalamu
Allah
alaikum,
bless
Mufti.
you. Wa alaikum assalam. Uh, People, Ahmed Sultan from Canada. You know what? I don't know what you guys are being fed in Canada, but whatever it is, it's boosting that brain power. I'm envious. Why don't I get this kind of stuff? Why don't I get it now, let alone in my younger days?